Hello, I'm Lloyd Malik from the law offices of Lloyd A. Malik, and welcome to the Ask Lloyd video series. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm excited to introduce the founder of the Counseling Center of Maryland, Marjorie Krepel, and her colleague, David Christie. They will share feedback on divorce and the stress it has on families. As a divorce lawyer, I receive many questions regarding what do I do if I wanted a divorce and I'm worried about my family, especially my children. So please watch the next segment as Marjorie and David discuss divorce.
Hi, David. It's great to see you.
Marjorie, it's been too long. Good to see you too. So we're going to talk about divorce today, huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So David and I are both with the Counseling Center of Maryland in Bethesda, Maryland, and we don't see each other because we're all working remotely these days. But great to reconnect via Zoom.
Yeah, good to see you too.
As we're looking at the pandemic, and one of the biggest aftermaths is, a higher rate of people considering divorce and going through the process of divorce. And, when we look at how we navigated the pandemic and the time home, the first question is that representative of how life has been all the way around,
Mhm. For me, there's a piece that the pandemic places more stress on couples in a variety of ways, and let's not go into that because that could take our whole time. But then there's this question of how does the couple respond? Does the couple respond by recognizing that for whatever reason, things aren't going as smoothly as they were and seek help, right? If we look at it from a systemic perspective, which both of us tend to do, that there are more outside pressures on the couple, some of them probably inner pressures generated by being in the house. And so something has to give. And one way to handle that is to get support through, couples counseling or family work. And I'm seeing an increase in couples reaching out to me for that before they get to the divorce issue, as well as sort of helping define whether or not they want to get divorced.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The pandemic has created a lot of questions. For one, a lot of people are in the house and doing what I like to call the hamster wheel of life. We're emptying the dishwasher, we're doing the laundry, we're cleaning the house, we're making dinner, and not making the time for alone time for themselves. And so you have that. And then you have this belief that this just isn't enough. This isn't what I want for my whole life. And then on top of it, oftentimes we have unrealistic expectations of what a relationship can be. So you put the two together, social media is, talking about, oh, it's so much more romantic. We're having all of this alone time together. And then someone reads that and they're on this hamster wheel. And it's like, wait, that's not happening. So, it is so important. It's really important to get in and get some help before it gets to that point in which you're not able to see through some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We look at two things that are best friends and then the aftermath. And the two things that are best friends in relationships are defensiveness and criticism. I'm going to criticize you. You're going to get defensive. You're going to criticize me back. And it's going to go back and forth and back and forth. And then we stonewall. I'm going to go on my side of the house. You're going to go to your side of the house. And then we get into our heads of like, wait, this marriage isn't working. This isn't working. And it's a very lonely, isolated feeling. But there are interventions for these things. There are antidotes for all of these things.
And I can tell by how you're describing it that you've had advanced Gottman training. And there is that piece of like when the couple starts turning away instead of turning to, they lose something. And I think about it in terms of losing, a sense of warmth and safety, almost kind of a nest. And how do we regain that, get access back to that? Almost with some couples, they have to recreate it.
Absolutely. That does happen. And it is really important, you mentioned advanced training, that when people do seek help, that they seek help with a therapist that has advanced training of some sort of evidence-based modality.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
isn't a lot required other than someone choosing to get advanced training.
Right. You have a counseling degree. I have a social work background, and neither of us had coursework on couples. The first thing I did when I was licensed was to start getting in-depth training with different couples modalities.
Yeah.
And it's made a huge difference in my work for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely, and mine as well. It's really important because going to someone who does not have that advanced training can
Hmm.
push things in the wrong direction, a direction it doesn't need to go. And there's not that there's any right or wrong, but you really want to do your due diligence. And a big piece of the puzzle is having the tools to navigate, to create that warmth and safety, and also having a realistic expectation. Uh,
Hmm.
of what a marriage should be, where you should find your fulfillment in life, that it can't all come from one place. It's got to come from a variety of places,
Hmm.
including friends and relatives and hobbies and interests and professional, aspirations and all of those things.
That's another way that COVID has really put pressure on couples, because we find ourselves having to, sort of fill the gaps created by our lack of exposure to the normal avenues in which we express ourselves and find meaning in life. So
Right,
there's just so much more pressure on our partner.
right,
Um,
right. So
yeah.
one of the most important things is that when we're getting to the point of feeling like I don't want to be in this marriage, that we're doing some from a very regulated, calm space, that it's
Mhm.
not a reactive space. I'm really angry. I'm going to call in a divorce attorney right away.
Right.
But it's
Right.
not coming from that reactive place, but instead something that's really well thought through,
Mhm.
and that, you've really kind of done all of the things beforehand to be sure that this is likely the step that you want to take.
Yeah, I agree with that. And some piece around having already tried to work through some of what feels like it's not working, and learned about your role in it, learned about the spouse's role in it, and really reaching a, I mean, it's almost like a reasoned, it's not like it's devoid of emotion, because of course it's not, and we wouldn't want that, but a reasoned decision that this really doesn't work, and I'm not going to be able to live the life that I need to live in this marriage, even if I continue working on the marriage.
Absolutely. And it's interesting when you say the role of myself, the role of the spouse. That's so important because we want to get into a blame game. And,
Right.
every time I've seen a couple, the other person is the identified patient, right?
Mhm.
If you fix them, we'll be okay. There's nothing wrong with
Mhm.
me. And, oftentimes we have to really look at this idea of blame, and that blame equals shame. I'm
Mhm.
feeling some sense of shame around my piece in it, and I'm going to just blame you because it's easier. And we
Mhm.
don't even know we're doing it.
Mhm.
Um, and just maintaining that willingness to look at your piece of things all the way through the process.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really important. It sort of touches on one of the fundamental beliefs I have about the couple before divorce, during, and then after, which is that in all times there is still a family system,
Yes.
and you have to, I mean, it's changing, right? In some cases profoundly, in other cases actually not so profoundly. The family system may have been characterized by rancor between the couple before, during, and after the divorce, right? That's a difficult situation, but it's a system, and the couple has to understand that just because they get divorced doesn't mean that the system ends. It just changes. And it's still so important to understand what's happening in the system so that they can steer it, minimize negative effects if they have children, especially on children, but on themselves too, and move forward with their lives.
Absolutely. One of the things that nobody ever tells couples is that when you go through a divorce, one or both parties are likely going to have some really significant struggles emotionally. They might have feelings of depression. They might actually go into clinical depression,
Mhm.
anxiety, all of these different things.
Mhm.
Um, there's so much that's impacted. What people don't realize is that a marriage, even a bad marriage, um, sometimes provides a sense of masking tape to protect one from the deepest sense of loneliness
Hmm.
sometimes people feel after divorce. And that becomes such a key point because when there are children involved, if we're not taking care of ourselves and our own pains regarding this, it's not good for the children.
Yeah.
We really need to get our own help, keep ourselves as strong as we can so we're not putting it on the children.
Hmm. I think about that in terms of, finding supports. If you know that this is coming or suspect this is coming, knowing that ahead of time can be helpful because it gives you some warning. You can set up some supports for yourself. And then also realizing that the spouse needs supports too, no matter what. And I don't mean supports like, well, they've moved on to someone else. I mean, actual supports. And so you're doing, to the degree that you can maintain empathy for your spouse, even if they are the leaver, you are doing your kids a huge favor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thinking about all the things that could be spinning in somebody's head after a separation, and they might be washing the dishes and the kids are like, mom, 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 and and the mom is so busy spinning in her head, she's not hearing, we're not mindful, not we're not as present. And it's really important to have a space to be able to get these things away from spinning in our head and instead being able to share them, being able to process them.
Right. And I loved your image with the I was fantasizing it was a daughter, not a son, but it could be either, of course. And it might be because my daughter's birthday is coming up. But there's this piece around if we fall into the rumination, right, then we lose connection with our children precisely when they need it the most.
Yeah.
Because one of the things the kids are struggling with is, how do I connect with mom and dad in the context of them splitting, right? I need both of them. I love both of them. And yet now do I have to choose? I won't go into the theory and research on this, but there's a lot that supports the idea that when there's a triangle and two people in the triangle don't get along, the other person feels a necessity of choosing between them. And so this also goes to the importance to the parents, not of not having conflict, but of doing it in a way where it's not destructive to the children's relationships with either of the parents. And so this piece around maintaining that connection, not getting caught up in our anger, not getting caught up in sadness, which is so difficult. I mean, even just saying that, it's like, as a therapist, just to say that to a potential client is like, no, that's a challenge. But being there for the kids in some way and being connective is key.
Right. Maintaining that sense of system that we are still a family in some sense. And
Hmm.
doing whatever you can do to make sure you're not splitting the kids and putting them in a position where they feel like they have to choose, like they have to have loyalty, like they have to support.
Right.
How do we do that? We do that by maintaining a position of the importance of your relationship with your father or with your mother and supporting that all the way through. Never, ever talking about your personal issues with the spouse in front of the children. That's what therapy is for. That's what groups are for. There
Hmm.
are many other avenues to do that. But to
Right.
put that on your children is so damaging. In fact, I know in Montgomery County, they require parents to go through parenting classes with the
Mhm.
county and they have to watch films and they teach you that. And then the parents go through it and they still do it. They
Yeah.
still bash each other to the children. It's the pain is so deep. And, if you think about it, when we have any kind of discomfort due to an emotion, whether it be sadness, anxiety, we feel that physically in our body. And when we feel
Hmm.
that physically in our body, we want to make it go away. How do we
Hmm.
make it go away? We talk about it. But
Hmm.
don't do it to your children, right? Like leave
Right.
them out of it, keep it separate, honor their relationship with both parents because they need both parents.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so important. And there's that line between, do you not talk to them about it at all? And the answer to that is no, right? But do you share details? And the answer to that is no. But you
Absolutely.
have to show up with them and recognize the reality of what's happening, because if you don't, they will feel abandoned. because they know and it's just sense. They just pick up so much more than we think they do, right? They get it, they know, and they knew you were fighting before if you were, and they have a sense of what it was about, probably, unless you're very quiet fighters. And so it's sort of, you can't deny it, you can't pretend, because then they'll feel abandoned.
Right. And the reality is we sometimes all get into all or nothing thinking, you know,
Mhm.
this person's good, this person's bad. And if we could get away from that, if we could think in a more dialectical way in terms of the real truth that we all have good in us, we all have done things that we regret, and
Right.
being able to talk about the other person to our children in the warmer, kinder ways, because
Mhm.
they're there. It's all
Right.
there.
Right. I mean, if we could actually do that, we might not be getting divorced, right?
Possibly,
Um,
yeah.
that's
Possibly.
that's a part of it.
Possibly. Possibly.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to touch on with the kids is, it's not their fault that a
Yeah.
divorce is happening. And
Yeah.
so when it comes to things like, you know, oh, my books are at this house, or my coat is at this house, or these
Mhm.
clothes are at this house, it's not their fault. And all too often, parents with their own levels of stress want to put that responsibility of bringing the stuff back and forth onto the kids. And of course, it's great if they can do that to some extent, but it's really important that one always remembers, this wasn't their choice. It's not normative for a child to have to go back and forth between houses. So
Mhm.
here you can buy double or be willing to drive and get the thing that they forgot without
Right.
putting it on them.
Right. Right. And there's that, there's a not new anymore, but this idea of having one home that the parents cycle in and out of, right? And the thing is that all of these are weird, right? It's not like, oh, well, we're doing that, so there's no impact on the kids. It's like, no, it's just trying to minimize where you can what the impacts are to the degree you can, given, honestly, given income, and where you work and convenience. Yeah.
That is the best clinical term for this. These things are weird. They just are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Nothing normal about cycling in and out of a home every 2 weeks. Yeah.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's still strange for the kids. It's
Right.
still, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
When there's a P, we're talking a lot about the kids, which is, good, because as a child of divorce, I hold them dear, right? But yeah, I'm thinking also about couples where they don't have kids, and in my mind as a therapist, I feel more opportunity when I'm working with those couples, and I'm not sure why. I think some of it is that, one, there is less cost uh, to well, I suppose, to divorcing, but there's less cost also in some ways to staying together often in and trying to figure out more about what's actually going on. Like, what's the dynamic that I carried into this relationship and that he or she carried into this relationship that's playing out here? And can I get a better handle on it, either within this relationship to heal it, or so that when I next have a relationship, I'm not carrying it in the same way. I have found a better way to be in relationship. And this is true, of course, with, parents with kids also, but it's one of the things I focus on as a couples therapist, both in the context of couples that come to me, hey, we've noticed a problem, we want some help. They're not talking about divorce. And then also in like the discernment counseling frame where somebody is talking about divorce and is leaning out. It's this focus on, okay, so what's yours, what's theirs, and how can we help each of you work on that while we're in the relationship?
Absolutely. It goes back to the talking about the shame versus blame. And we
Mhm.
all choose the people that we choose for particular reasons. We
Mhm.
often choose them just perfectly in
Mhm.
that we're trying to heal something from within ourselves. And we're
Mhm.
choosing this person because they represent that opportunity for that healing.
Mhm.
And so when we look at and begin to understand our attachment styles and what's leading us to make the choices that we're making, and how did I choose this person? And what can I learn from that? There is
Mhm.
so much to be gained. And that's why, it's so important to not walk away and, oh, it was all their fault. They were the
Right.
problem, you know?
Right. Right. I found that to be a helpful frame from Imago, from the Imago training, this idea that it may feel like this person is the last person I want to be married to because it's just so painful to be with them.
Right.
On the other hand, there is a choice that I made, and likely that has a lot to do with finding somebody that I need to grow with,
Yeah,
and can help me do that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
As annoying as it is, right?
Difficult work. Yeah,
Yeah.
really difficult work. And there are so many different modalities that could help people do these different things. Yeah, it's fantastic. So, wrapping up on all of this, it's, you know, really imperative that when it's a full family with children, that it's understood that you will always be a full family with children in some capacity, and
Hmm.
figuring out how we can enable our children to feel safe in this changing structure.
Right. Right. Another piece, there's at least one of you knows that you're seeking a divorce, right? And to do some planning that's not legal planning, but it's rather, support planning
Absolutely.
for yourself, for the kids. If you have the wherewithal to do some couples work ahead of making a final decision, that is strongly recommended. It can, you might even be able to heal a little bit just to be able to process the idea of getting divorced together in a healthier way that will then have benefits, down the road.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then having the individual support, with friends and hobbies and interest. My favorite modality for supporting someone through this kind of life transition is group therapy. To be with a group of people who are there supporting you and become your tribe and your community.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And support in a healthy, sometimes challenging, right, way, as well as positively, unconditionally, supporting. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, to start this process in a non-reactive state, to start getting help as soon as signs of
Hmm.
satisfaction pop up. And
Hmm.
to know that one of the reasons these things happen in the first place is because we keep so many secrets from each other. And what I mean by that are withholds. It could be that you get really annoyed that your spouse leaves the tube of toothpaste out. And you never say anything about it just because you don't want to create a thing, but it's like annoying you more and more and more each time. And
Hmm.
then you're keeping all these secrets of all these things that are problems. So, that's where counseling can really come in to teach you how to have these conversations in a safe way so things don't build up and resentment doesn't build. And then I'm in my side of the house and you're in your side of the house and we just keep separate.
Yeah. I think, I frame that as an inability to have healthy conflict.
Yeah.
And that's a theme throughout a lot of the couples that I work with. One or both grew up in families of origin where they just didn't witness their parents being able to have a conflict and keep it rational, keep it warm, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Either cold or way, way too hot.
Absolutely. One of the most appealing things within a relationship is responsiveness. Someone provides some gentle feedback, and
Hmm.
the other person is responsive to it. They own at least a little piece of it, or at a minimum, say, okay, let me take that on board. Let me think about it. To approach these things with openness and curiosity instead of defensiveness and criticism.
Right.
That, in and of itself, is such a different way of navigating in relationships.
Hmm. It sure is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as we're, bringing this to a conclusion, I'm, usually when we do this kind of thing, we try to end on a high note. Um,
Mhm.
but, you know, we're talking about divorce. And so it's not that it's only dreary. It's not. There's tremendous opportunity in it, and can be for personal growth, both going through the process and afterwards. But
Absolutely.
I don't find a, way of ending that feels completely up, which that feels right.
Yeah, I agree. That's, it's the appropriate emotional place to be.
Right. Well, it gets back to what you were saying about, the dialectic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's growth, but there's also pain.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well,
Good to
thank
see
you.
you.
Good to see you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.